You're listening to the Dibbly-Dobbly podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Let's move on to our final topic of this discussion today, Mark, and let's talk about the stigma around mental health. And there's often a stigma around mental health. People think that mental health is a weakness, in particular men. Men find it difficult to speak about their problems with their own mental health and find it difficult to speak about their physical health as well. Men don't want to talk about their mental health issues because they may get judged by their friends. And as I mentioned before, it's a sign of a weakness. So they don't want to express that. People fear mental health and don't wish to go through it or have any mental illnesses that associate itself with mental health. Mark, mental health is always something we're going to have to deal with on an ongoing basis in our lives. As we mentioned earlier, it's that continuum. It never stops. It never goes away. It's always there in the background. It's always there in our daily lives. So we need to break down the barrier and the stigma associated with mental health. My question to you is, Mark, why do we have this stigma towards mental health? And why is it important to break the stigma on mental health?
Yeah, the stigma does still surely exist, even if it is to a lesser extent than it would have been in years gone by. And we look through the cricketing experience, certainly here in the UK, where Marcus Trescothick's example was met with a lot of skepticism and a lot of judgmental, ill-informed comments about how he should be feeling when it's his life. And then we go forward, we had the Jonathan Trott's example where it was more mixed. And then you get towards now Ben Stokes' recent example where overwhelmingly the reaction is positive and a lot more respectful of the fact that everyone has different experiences within their life. But what we see on the surface may well be very different to how people individually approach it. And it can be negative still. There's still things which stop people talking about things that they are going through, just in the same way that there's physical illnesses which people still struggle to seek help for. We have big campaigns with regards checking different parts of your body for lumps and bumps which might be signs of cancer, and we still have people, for reasons that are multiple, not doing that. So it's still an ongoing battle to address those things which can be regarded as a weakness or asking for help. But the way we do it surely is talking about the topic more, but also reframing this idea of mental health as not just being about the negatives, because people don't want to just have a conversation about problems. If we can get mental health as a term more used as something which is the whole spectrum, the whole continuum, then there's something in there for everyone. When we talk about how mentally tough someone was, when we think about what must be going through Joe Root's mind to be able to churn out run after run after run, that's mental health just as much as it is someone at the other end of the continuum really struggling. So if we get used to talking about it more, it demystifies it. And then we realise for everyone who's doing times in life where they do really well, there'll be times where they don't do so well. And that is normal, and we can accept that, so that it's actually quite odd for people to have a negative view of something that can happen to all of us, and to a varying degree does happen to all of us.
Yeah. Is it a generational thing as well? Towards mental health, that people of older generations think that, they're just soft, that you got to toughen up and stuff like that. Do you think it's more generational in people's views towards mental health?
It can be, yeah. Certainly get examples of where people's views are rooted in what an orthodoxy would have been in the past. But we still see that there's issues with younger people asking for help, and maybe being, in some ways, with there being a greater conversation about mental illness, particularly, people feeling like what someone else is describing isn't quite what they're experiencing, so maybe that isn't a mental illness, and there's still confusion, a lack of clarity about what actually is a decline in someone's health. So for that reason and many others, the importance of talking and getting good information out there is vital.
Yeah, it is. And hopefully we can break down the stigma. Do you think we'll ever break it, or do you think we'll keep just chipping away at it and it will happen in years to come? Probably not straight away.
Yeah, I think I think we can't imagine something happening, overnight or in a very short period of time, because attitudes persist no matter what they are. But that idea of chipping away at it means that we're not defeated by saying, oh, we can't deal with it wholly. It will make a difference to a person, 2 people, 4 people, 8 people, on and on as time develops. So if each individual person who's got an interest in this just makes it their mission to try and influence things positively in the circle that they find themselves in, then that effect going forward can be really powerful. And a bit like the practice of mindfulness, not worrying too much about what happens on a grander scale, bringing it more to home and saying, what can I do? And that's really what Open Up Cricket has been, saying, right, well, what can I do? If I can speak to people about this, hopefully that makes a bit of an impact. It gets someone thinking at least, or reading something. They might mention it to someone, and then you're like, that's great. That's the idea that I suppose we've all got to have.
Yeah. Just one more question before we wrap up today's discussion, which has been an enjoyable discussion. I've enjoyed it immensely, and I've learned so much myself. And I hope everyone's learned a bit about mental health, a bit more in this episode. Do you think that the last 2 years, where we've gone through a lot of tough days as a whole universe, in terms of the whole world going through the same problems, do you think that's made people more wary about their own mental health? And do you think that's helped try and chip away at the stigma towards it, because people have experienced their own battles with mental health during the last 2 years, especially in the UK, who's done it tougher than anyone else in the world? Do you think people have opened up more during the last 2 years?
I reckon they have. I think that particularly in the real center of the pandemic and the lockdown and the problems that brought for people, it was a given that people would be finding things difficult. So that got rid of some of the aspects of, is it okay to talk about how I'm feeling? Is it okay to say I'm struggling? Because most conversations you'd have would be, how are you coping with this? And it was fine to say, oh, actually, I'm missing this a lot, or I'm really struggling with that. And I think that brought things forward quite a lot, to realise that because we're all going through times that are different, and in a lot of cases very challenging, we understand how that could affect other people more. It's now just to what extent that's kept going. Have we been complacent and thought that was just a period in time and we move back to maybe being more disconnected? I'm not sure, but it definitely made a big impact and made people at least consider the issue quite a bit more than they had done before. And I think we probably have some carry on from that going forward now.
Hi everyone. If this discussion on mental health has raised any questions about your mental health and well-being, please seek help from the various organisations in your country. If you live in Australia or the UK, please check out the links in the description.